Ready? Good evening. This is Harold Watson, Zoning Chair of the Stratford Zoning Commission that now sits for its regular monthly administrative meeting on Wednesday, April 12, 2023 at 7:01. The quorum for this meeting is 3, and I will now call on the following elected commissioners. Zone 1 Commissioner Jim Bigliotti.
Here.
Zone 2 Commissioner Dion Francis.
Here.
Zone 3 Commissioner, myself, Harold Watson, here. Zone 4 Commissioner Deborah Lamberti.
Here.
Zone 5 Commissioner Len Petrocelli.
Here.
There are no alternates present that I can see. We also welcome Gail DeCilio, our recording secretary, Patricia Sullivan, our zoning legal counsel, and Jay Habansky will be here shortly. He's about 6 blocks away, but we're going to go ahead and start. Public is free to listen, but may only speak at the invitation of the chair during both administrative and public hearings. With that said, I call to order this monthly session of the Stratford Zoning Commission at 7:02. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
We'll now go to our work agenda. Okay, I need help. What is this first item? Vote on items from the 3/23/20. That is the, I'm going to hold this until the end when we have Jay here. We can do the approval of minutes.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to take the items on the work agenda out of order.
All in favor?
I second.
Aye. Oh, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, we're now going to go on then to approve the minutes of March 22nd.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman?
Second.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're now going to the administrative site plan review. I believe we have someone here from AT&T, is it? Yes. There is a packet there if you wanted to pull it out. It's the Sikorsky property. And your name is?
My name is Daniel Patrick. I'm a lawyer for AT&T from the law firm Cuddy & Fader in White Plains, New York. And the application is pretty straightforward. AT&T does not currently have its wireless equipment on the existing facility at the Sikorsky property. They'd like to attach their equipment there. They're not proposing to increase the height of the tower at all. They're not proposing, any significant changes to the tower itself. The tower itself is about 190 feet tall currently. AT&T is proposing to co-locate at the 170 foot, so we're going below the highest point of the tower. We've submitted the administrative site plan application. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, but I'm hoping this will be a pretty straightforward application. This is one of the highest preference locations and districts within the town here itself as per the code. So we think this is a great opportunity for co-location to improve AT&T's wireless coverage and capacity in the area and really minimize any impacts due to too many towers or anything like that. So,
let me just ask the broad question. My assumption is that Sikorsky is absolutely okay with everything you're doing.
Absolutely, yes, we have a lease with them. So
okay, and reading the documents here, you're not in any wetland,
nope,
watershed areas, so
nope.
Though that should not be an issue either. I'll turn it open to questions from anybody here. Len? Oh, Deborah.
So you're simply going to attach one of your antennas to an existing tower?
Yes, 6 of them, but yes, 6 antennas,
okay,
1 tower.
but it's still, it's not a new tower, it's just...
Correct.
Okay.
Same tower.
May I ask you another question?
Absolutely.
I live in the center of Stratford. Will it help my reception? Because I'm an AT&T customer.
It should, because really the purpose of it is to offload some of the capacity on the nearby towers. So it's not like a lot of times the coverage is the issue, but in this instance, the surrounding towers are really overstressed and they're overused. So, the idea really is to improve coverage in the general vicinity of Stratford and the surrounding area. So hopefully.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, just general question. So you're basically just adding a newer device to an existing tower to
Where's the ball?
expand or relieve some of the stress on other towers. Is
Yes.
there any issues that, you know, that could arise from that you know, that you can kind
No,
of address to us?
part of the due diligence process that AT&T performs, they perform a structural analysis to make sure the tower can hold it up. They perform RF reports or radio frequency evaluations to make sure that the RF levels at the ground won't over extend what's permitted by the FCC. And in this instance, it's below 1% of what's allowed, so it's very minimal. There's no adverse impacts expected. This is really, you know, we think a perfect example of co-location using existing structures to, you know, satisfy a need.
Thank you.
Motion to approve?
Don't we need to say thank you and let him sit down? Yes, exactly.
Withdraw my motion until you ask the question.
Oh, it's not a public hearing, you're right, so we can just go ahead.
But if you've let the applicant speak during an administrative session, I think it's probably a good idea
To do it anyway.
to see if there's anybody out here who would like to speak.
I will do that. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this? Hearing none. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak in opposition to this? Is there anybody who would like to speak either way to this? Hearing none.
Motion to approve?
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. Have a good evening, everybody.
Jay, is there any cam review? Sorry,
Thank you, Attorney Sullivan.
we're holding that till the end.
And I apologize for being late. Sorry, everybody.
Do not accept that from Jay. He was at the game.
I was at the Mets game. The Mets won. It's for my son's 10th birthday. Bad accident in Greenwich on the Merit. Yeah, and my dad wouldn't have been proud because I didn't leave in the 6th inning to beat traffic. So no coastal site plan applications this month.
Okay, now then we're going to go on to coastal apartment applications and ADU. I believe we have someone here to speak on 44 Rygate Terrace. Yes?
No, that's
Oh.
the applicant for the Stratford Avenue.
Oh, I'm
Applicant's
sorry.
representative.
Okay, we do have copies of what's before you. We can just move ahead with this, right?
With 44 Rygate Terrace?
Yes.
So I can just give a quick explanation.
Go ahead, go
Just a
ahead.
quick explanation for the commission. The applicant sought variances about 15 years ago to build an attached garage with a second floor living quarters upstairs. It was just part of the house. The applicant would now like to turn that living quarters into an accessory dwelling unit for his son to live at home and help run their business. They have a business that they run, and the son is going to be moving back home. So no variances, although if it didn't receive any variances 15 years ago, it technically would have needed one to establish this unit, but since it was already granted, it just came right to the zoning commission. If you drive by the house, you would have no idea. There's nothing unusual about the home, so there's no concerns from planning and zoning staff.
And correct me if I'm wrong, looking at everything, all the building is being done within the existing footprint. So
That's correct.
our usual problem is stuff going out of the existing footprint and squeezing the available land around it. In this case, they're just simply taking what is already there as part of the existing residential structure. It's my understanding they're just renovating.
That's correct. There's no footprint expansion. All they're doing is taking that space that was already approved above the garage as living quarters and now just converting it to an accessory apartment. There's no addition. They're not doing any additional work other than some interior reconfiguration. That complies with the accessory apartment regulation.
Any other questions?
Just as a point of clarification, so the garage, the structure's already built?
That's correct. It was legally built about 15 years ago.
So it's really a use that they're asking to have changed.
That's correct.
They're actually modifying it to become an ADU, meaning they'll have the requirements of reporting every second or third year to the town, whether it's still being used in that fashion. Will someone give me a
Motion to
motion?
approve? Because we just got to approve.
Seconded, anybody?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Okay, let's go on to the next item. This one, I hope that we can actually get a vote on tonight. The proposed ADU regulation modifications. I sent some stuff into Jay. You should have a copy of that in your packet tonight, but we also received it at our last meeting. What's critical is that I'm trying to get this to the Stratford Housing Partnership. I sit on that. And I'm trying to get this to them so that they can start working with it, because they now have hired consultants to begin rewriting our zoning. And I'd like this to be in their hands so that they have something to work from. So I don't think that this is 100%, but I also know that whatever we give them is going to be rewritten extensively based on both a lot more people in town and also requirements from legal for ADUs. Am I correct, Jay? Does that sound right?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we actually haven't hired the consultant yet. We have interviewed all of our consultants for an update of the zoning regulations. We're just tabulating all the scores for the interviews, and we expect to have the consultant selected by next week. So I think the goal, and I know that I did receive some comments today while I was on the road, and I didn't get a chance to type those up in a memo for you, but Commissioner Vigliotti, I'm not sure, did you have some comments for the ADUs before we send them off to the Housing Partnership?
Well, Jim, can you just go over them briefly, and maybe we can just agree to have them included?
One of the questions that came up was in section C, when they talked about the setbacks for the lot, and should those requirements be changed. With that in mind, I think the language should say something about maintaining the front setbacks so that any additions made to the original structure or any accessory structure built on the lot, which they sometimes call granny pods, would have to be built at the rear, kind of like if a storage structure or a garage was added. I think an effort should be made as much as possible to maintain the look from the street for pedestrians, you know, that front lot, that front view. Section C, number 6, remove the language that says the occupant must be a member of the family of the principal owner, but then leave all the other language intact. And then in section G, it talks about if you want to have an affordable housing consideration.
I'm sorry, what section is that?
Section G,
Okay,
number 2.
yep.
I'm just wondering that it says that in section G number 2 that in order to be approved, you have to meet all of the language as described in section C. So I was just wondering if we changed any of the wording in section C number 1, would that just cover as it's written now, or would that have to change in order to be compliant? And then for number 3, there's language that talks about having the applicant or the homeowner verify the affordability or the affordable housing threshold.
But Jim, you understand that is only for an affordable
Correct.
housing.
But when we tried that for the property, the applicant on Honey Spot Road, the town they didn't want to let that entity take that responsibility on their own, and they suggested a list of individuals that, do we want to do that again, right? So that rather than let the homeowner say, this person complies, that we have somebody that the town has faith and trust in to verify that, to make sure that it's official.
But I think the difference that Jim, is that when we were talking about multi-unit housing, here we're talking about a single unit with an ADU. So the way existing law is, if I'm correct, is that it's the duty of the owner of 51% of the property to do that reporting to the town, whether it's still being used as an ADU, and report on the income level of the occupants for that section. Is that correct?
It is, but I think what Commissioner Vigliotti is suggesting is that he wants to make sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it's being rented out as it's supposed to be. It's not being, they could come in and tell us, well, it's an affordable unit. Well, who's verifying that it is being rented out at the correct 80% household median income for the area? And so typically, when I first started here, there were people dropping off W-2s and tax filings that I would have to go through, and I'm certainly not qualified to be doing, I didn't feel qualified to be doing that. So we recommend that, or that this commission will condition that an affordability administrator be assigned to a 30, 40 unit development. This is kind of unique when it's one. I don't know what the right answer is if we say, hey, you still have to hire an affordability or a compliance manager for your ADU. Maybe that is appropriate.
Or, otherwise, how would, just as you said, you're not, would anyone have the proper knowledge base to know and to be able to evaluate that and figure that out? Like if I decided I wanted to rent out my basement?
It's unlikely.
Well, does that, would that fall into something like a Section 8?
No.
It's just a certificate, actually. I'm actually certified. It's a certified occupancy specialist, or
So
voucher specialist.
the list that the state has of occupancy specialists, we theoretically could have a list to give them saying, here's someone who you can hire to do the annual reporting. Correct?
Correct.
Technically,
And Commissioner Francis, didn't mean to cut you off there. We don't have to make the change here. I can send the referral to the housing partnership with a note next to this that says, how can we ensure yearly compliance while not being too burdensome, right? And I'll just add the suggestions. Do we require an affordability manager like we would a typical, 30-unit development? Or is there some standard that maybe is not quite as burdensome so that we're not discouraging it at the same time? So,
And this is not a new question. The exact same questions came up within the Stratford Housing Partnership. But those questions were asked a year ago. So it's a ripe question that we're looking at seriously on the Stratford Housing Partnership. It's a problem, I'm sure you know it, with all your other real estate dealings.
Basically, it's just annually, they basically calculate the income of that tenant. It's a certification that, takes a couple days.
We're just trying in any way possible to capture every unit that's affordable that will allow us to build to we're 440 units short of affordable units in this town. So if we can get an ADU that comes in as an affordable unit, that gives us one more that we can add to the list. So that's why I think it's really important that we do this. But I think what Jay was suggesting is that we push this over to Stratford Housing Partnership, because it's all going to go through them eventually anyhow in terms of the revision. And believe me, the lawyers are going to look at it carefully based on the state laws that are changing in terms of this. They're changing the laws to make it easier to do. They're pushing us to try to move in that direction also. But you brought up the stumbling block is the average person doesn't know how to fill out this paperwork and keep themselves legal. We've got to find a mechanism where the town can say, for this amount of money, we can do this for you. Or here's the list of people who can do this for you.
At the same token, that could be something, income coming into town. If you want us to calculate the annual income of this tenant, then, you have to pay us a certain amount when it comes to the town, that payment. And we calculate it and we know it's correct and we know they're compliant.
The housing partnership's attitude towards this, if I'm remembering correctly, was that we wanted it to be income neutral. That we didn't want to look at this as a profit center for the town. We want to look at this as a way of adding to our numbers and not putting such a burden on individual homeowners that they don't want to do it.
But at the same token, you have to pay somebody to do
Yeah,
it.
no,
I mean, somebody has to calculate.
and maybe that's what the suggestion should.
And maybe because this is a one-for-one, we're creating one affordable unit and not another market rate unit with it. We're truly gaining ground by allowing affordable units. So maybe the town does, I'll just say, suck it up, and maybe I do have to check W-2s for these to make it easier to reduce some of the burden in cost. We want to encourage it, not discourage it, since we really get a lot for just creating one unit and not creating another market rate at the same time. So I think that's something that even the housing partnership can help with some recommendations on how we do that.
And right now, we don't know how many of these units we have.
There's no state agency that could do
Not for
this?
single individual homes.
Yeah, not for single.
If you were in Washington State, yes, there would be, but not in.
Has to be, isn't there a certain threshold? It has to be a certain amount.
Yeah, it goes into the 80%, da-da-da-da-da. It follows the same kind of requirements as any kind of affordable housing would. But Jay, what do you need what instruction do you need from us? Your point's very valid, both of your points are very valid. How can we fit this into what you have in front of you?
Without burdening you anymore with all the, stuff that's on your plate as.
Well, I can appreciate that. Thank you. No, I think the intent was always that we would provide a rough framework for the consideration of changing this section. And now I think you all can do just an informal vote to refer it to the housing partnership for any of their recommendations. And then they'll send it back with, hey, we think you should keep this or change some of these, or don't touch it. Don't change anything. And then you all will have to react to that recommendation. Maybe you say, well, we want to do it anyways, or no, we don't. And so what I need, I think, right now is just an informal vote to refer this to the Stratford Housing Partnership.
And right now, it's only going to the Stratford Housing Partnership. We're not sending it to anybody else. It's going to them because that's their area of expertise. So Jay, can you incorporate Jim's comments? And can you just add a footnote maybe saying that this is an area that we really feel expertise needs to be brought, and maybe housing partnerships needs to give us some direction?
Absolutely.
And I think that might be a way for us to solve this and move it forward with that one particular thing. Can you motion that?
Make a motion to send this forward to the Housing Partnership with the mentioned suggestions for edit, modification that I described earlier.
I second.
All in favor? Oh, discussion.
Discussion.
Go ahead. Come on, you're just eating up time. Let's go.
No discussion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0. Yes, sir.
About the process. The consultants are being interviewed, that's completed, I assume, or almost?
Can you repeat that one more time?
I said the consultants being interviewed is completed just about?
That's correct. The interviews are complete. I'm calling to check references and double check resumes and things like that at the moment.
And who's going to make the final, who's going to select the council?
No, so it's selected by the selection committee, which is planning and zoning staff, the economic development director, and the chairman of the zoning commission.
And then what happens afterwards once they're selected? How's their direction going to be?
So each respondent had kind of a different timeline. Some are about a year to a year and a half. One is 2 years. So essentially, it's some applicants are presenting a meeting with this commission every single month to talk about, hey, what did you learn during public feedback or during your public feedback during the POCD process.
I just want to make, so they're going to sit with all of us.
We will have one meeting at least a month where they're going to pull out one section and say, this is what we're going to discuss.
Okay.
Or very close to every month. If, there may be like in the very beginning, they're not going to meet maybe every month. They're going to be doing data gathering. But the zoning commission is the community advisory committee for, you essentially will be the committee. Once we select
So we'll have
the
input.
firm, you all are instructing them what needs to be done.
Okay, thank you.
Based on state law. So they're going to
We
move
wouldn't
us,
dream of violating any law.
they're going to move us closer to what state law is actually saying right now versus where we are. Eventually, that will make us be less litigious, I hope. All right, so you're okay on that? Any sediment erosion? No. Any zoning enforcement? No. Other items? What we need to do now is go back to our bugaboo with cannabis. No, well, should we, he's cannabis, right?
Yes, but the public hearing is closed. No one is speaking other than staff and commission.
So he's here to listen. We had put together, I think everybody got this, the 6 points that we had put together after 2 public hearings of things we thought could help the town better accept what was being done here. I can tell you that Jay worked very hard with the applicant and got basic approval on all of these items. So we were ready to present them, adding it to whether we accept it or deny it. We were going to add this to our expression. Excuse me?
Condition.
Yes. In addition, Jay went to state law and printed out, if you read through this, I hope everybody did, because guaranteed it's going to come up again. This is Senate Bill 1201, in which it's very clear, if you go to the page 211, the third paragraph down, the tax collected pursuant to this section shall be used by such municipality to A, make improvements to the streetscapes and other neighborhood developments in and around each community in which a cannabis retailer, hybrid retailer, or micro-cultivator is located. Fund educational programs or youth employment and training programs in such municipality. Fund services for individuals released from the custody of Commissioner of Correction, Probation, or Parole residing in such municipality. Fund mental health and addiction services. Fund youth services bureaus established pursuant to Section 1019 of the General Statutes and to municipal juvenile review boards. Fund efforts to promote civic engagement in communities in such municipality. And it goes on further, or prior to that, it goes on to explain how that payment is made. Essentially, the cannabis retailer will pull that as that proportion, whatever it is, 3 or 7%, I don't remember it right, 3%. We'll pull that fund and yearly we'll allocate it. They have some say in how it's allocated, but so does the town. What I read you, A, B, C, D, E, are places where the town can spend that money. But if you'll notice, A is make improvements to streetscapes and neighborhood developments in and around each community in which a cannabis retailer is located. So part of the problem that we had with so many people speaking out against this, I think will be really impacted by this if we have money for development, sidewalks, bike lanes, lights, all kinds of things, more security, more patrols. Any of that money that we get could be spent in those areas. In addition, South End Community Center, there are places where we could also put it into programs. So I just wanted to make sure, if you haven't read it, go back and read it now, because it really does influence, and it's not often we get this kind of a program. So thank you, Jay, for doing a lot of hard work on this. How do we proceed since there is no one here? Can we vote this as it is? And
Well, I think kind of where we left off, just as a quick recap from last month's administrative meeting, there was a motion to deny, that motion failed, and then we actually, before that, there was a motion to approve. I think we determined that it's better to make a motion to approve, and if it fails, it's denied. If it gets the 4 votes it needs, it would be approved. And there were some questions about me presenting a full motion in the event that it passes. So that's kind of where we're sitting now. I think someone would make a motion to approve with conditions from my staff report, there's 7, and then there's an additional from the testimony, and if it passes, it's approved. If it doesn't, it's denied. So if you look at, I just want,
We're only voting for the items.
We're voting to approve with the condition of these items.
We're voting to approve the project with these conditions. Doesn't matter. It's still before us.
so, but we determined that the proper procedure is to vote to approve, and if it gets the votes, it's approved. If it fails to get the 4 votes it needs, the supermajority, then it's denied. But we wanted to have all the right conditions in place in case it has the votes. So,
But it doesn't necessarily apply to this petition now, right? Because it's not there anymore.
well, it would. What do you mean it's not there anymore?
It's not pulled, it's still there. So we still have to vote on it.
Okay.
No, yeah.
So I'm going to go down this list. If everybody's looked through this and made notes,
I just want to be clear, we're voting that they can move in there?
And we're voting to approve.
we're voting to approve the proposal that came before us.
Correct.
No one has removed the proposal. So it still exists for us to act on it. Since they didn't send us a letter saying withdrawal,
So actually, if they don't withdraw, we're approving it?
we're approving it,
No?
whether they
They could
withdraw.
not withdraw, and you could approve it or deny it.
Right.
So there's 2 options. The applicant the application before you needs to be voted on, either to be approved or denied. It has
Okay.
not been withdrawn. I'm not sure where that's come from, but I've received no indication from the applicant that the application has been withdrawn. So we need a motion to approve, and I just want to be clear, we have these conditions that I put together from your testimony, but I have 7 other conditions from my staff comments that were in my original staff comments that need to be attached as well in the event that this gets approved. And I'm happy to read those into the record. They are essentially in the zoning regulations. They say any project that gets approved, we should be adding these conditions. All I'm doing is pulling it out of the zoning regs.
So if you want to read it in, or we
I'd be
can
happy to.
simply hand it, and she can print it in the.
I'd be happy to
as
read
read.
it in for the record.
Okay, go ahead.
For you all to just hear.
Okay.
Number 1, the applicant shall obtain the appropriate dispensary or production facility permit issued by the state of Connecticut's
Could I
Department
stop
of
you one
Consumer-
second? Remember, Stratford is approved for 2 of these retail residents. So I guarantee you sometime this year, we're going to get 2 applications that are ripe. So whatever we're doing here, we'll just pull it right out again and say, here's where you start.
And we can hold them accountable too, because
Yeah, we'll already have really done the work we need to do. Go ahead, I'm sorry, Jay.
So the applicant shall, number 1, the applicant shall obtain the appropriate dispensary facility permit issued by the state of Connecticut's Department of Consumer Protection or other state agency as regulations can change. In addition to the special case criteria, the commission shall pay close attention, the applicant shall pay close attention to odor control, distances, and uses mentioned in subsection 15, landscape buffers, and other adjoining uses. Number 2, conditional approval shall become automatically finalized upon receipt of by the zoning commission of a copy of the appropriate permits issued by the Department of Consumer Protection. Number 3, if the applicant fails to provide the zoning commission with a copy of the required permits from DCP within 6 months of the date of the commissioner's conditional approval, such conditional approval shall automatically expire without further action by the commission. Number 4, a 6-month extension of such conditional approval shall be granted to the applicant upon written notification to the zoning commission that an application for the Department of consumer protection permit has been filed, indicating the expected decision date of the DCP on said permit. Number 5, the parking lot shall be resurfaced, replaced, and/or restriped with an appropriate amount of ADA parking spaces included per the state building code. Number 6, per the town engineer's comments, the applicant shall remove directly connected impervious area from the drainage system by storing half inch of the runoff from the impervious area. Hooded outlets on the catch basins that connect to the public storm drain shall be installed, as it would help to remove contaminants downstream. And lastly, per the conservation superintendent, the planting plan shall only consist of native species. Additionally, all Ligustrium, I'm not even going to try to say that one, shall be removed. Obtusifolium shall be removed, as it is an invasive species which is against the law to import, move, sell, purchase, transplant, cultivate, or distribute in Connecticut. I would add the additional 6 conditions from your testimony prior to the drafting of my, after the drafting of my regulations that we have all already discussed. Should I? Well,
Yeah, I just want to make 2 comments about these conditions. Jay gave us a choice between A and B. We can let it go as is, but we can also choose which one we'd rather see.
these are the hours.
I would rather see B, because it keeps the place closed Sunday until 2 o'clock, which is after church. But I don't care one way or the other. That's my personal preference. The only other comment I had was in section 2, when the by appointment only requirement after consultation with police, health, ZEO, economic development offices, if you could add zoning into that.
In number 2, you want that added? Okay.
Into the list of everybody before it comes to us. And then at the very end on section 6, second paragraph, independently with the mayor's office, the Economic Development South End Community Center, in year 1, quarterly, and thereafter, a minimum of once a year. So that year 1, we're saying you need to meet with us every 3 months instead of once a year. So that actually they're building some kind of relationship.
Got it.
And that's were my only comments. Anybody else?
I have an additional one. So I thought that maybe we could also, as condition for approval, we would allow the dispensary to operate for a year and then have the applicant come back again. I don't know if that's possible, but, you know, it just seems to me that we could let them know that it's conditional. The people in the community would know it's conditional, and then because I don't anticipate there being any concerns or issues, but if anything did come up, any of the issues that were raised at the public hearing came up, much like when we had a public hearing about Washington Boulevard, and there were a lot of concerns about that, and we approved that. We approved it on condition that the applicant had to come back after a year. So, you know, maybe with the same spirit in mind, we do the same thing for Stratford Avenue, you know, and with the, you know, thinking that because this is an issue of great concern to the people that are directly impacted, as a sign of good faith for their concerns, we make the approval conditional for 1 year, and then they come back for approval. You know, assuming that there are no people partying in the parking lot, there are not traffic lines, you know, up and down Stratford Avenue, and you know, a lot of the concerns that people had about it. You know, none of those things pop up, and then we can we can extend the approval further after that.
Just in response to that, and I think your comment is well-intentioned, I think the difference is between there is a little bit of a difference between the administrative approval that was given for some of the sidewalk sales down at the beach, and this is that, well, this is a special case. A special case runs with the land, and I'm not sure that we can put a sunset or a conditional timing on it that says, well, we're going to give you a year and then come back and then we can potentially take it away. I think it runs with the land. We can double check with the town attorney to see if Attorney Sullivan has any comments about that. I would also say that just given the level of financial investment and security that this type of business might need, they may be hesitant, but I think it's ultimately your decision at the advice of the attorney.
Yeah, I don't think you can condition it. I mean, I think Jay is correct. There's the financial investment. There's also the licensing, which you can't just sort of pick up that license and move it somewhere else. You have to get the license and then get the location. So I don't think, I think it would be very impractical here, and legally I don't think you can do it, because I do think it runs with the land. It's sort of like giving somebody a variance and then saying, come back next year and we'll see whether it's too big. So, I don't think you can do that. I would put whatever conditions, I would be as strict with your conditions as you want to be now in terms of hours or things like that. You could always come back and ask for, like, let's say you said, I mean, I'm just pulling this out of thin air, but let's say you said you can be open from 12 to 5 every day. And then it was working out really well, and they came back and you said, okay, now you can be open from 9 to 9. But I don't think that you can ask them to come back and then reduce what you're giving them when it's a special permit, because it runs with the land, and it may contain conditions, but it can't be a condition that we can take this away from you. That's just not a condition. So I think it's well-intentioned, but I don't think you can do that.
The state could take away their license if they're not fulfilling their obligation.
Right, and if they took away their license, then they would have to shut down.
Then they would have to shut.
It would be no different than
Which has happened. There are other.
Right, it would be
I don't
no
know,
There
different
were
than
6 just the other day, from what I heard. 6 licenses were removed.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I think there are growing pains, and the question is, with the equity partnerships in particular and things like that, there's, but it would be like giving a liquor store, a location permit. It's not for you to then take it away, because that's what you're doing here, is you're giving them a location permit, really, for cannabis.
I'm not a lawyer. So I don't even play one on TV. All right, so anyway.
Well, Jay, I tried to cover in 2 and 6. I mean, Jim, that's what 2 and 6 represent. Part of what you were talking about. We tried to cover that in 2 and 6. Any other discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I am aware of the fact that we approved 2 canvases for the town of Stratford, and I am not opposed to that. I am not opposed to the people that came forward because they seem like a very reputable company. I am opposed to the location. And I think by changing the hours and decreasing the hours, you'll increase the amount of activity between those times. In other words, if you give them from 9 in the morning till 9 at night, they have 12 hours to get there. If you cut it down to 6 hours, the people that were going to go from 9 to 9 are not going to go during a 6-hour time frame. So that could even create a bigger problem. That's it. Right.
Thank you. Anybody else? Dion?
No, I mean, I hear what Commissioner Willini said, but I mean, that's hypothetical. I mean, we don't know. We've never done this. We've never went down this avenue. And I just think that I hear the concerns of the people, like I said before in the last meeting. And I also stated, sometimes we have to, listen to our constituents because they put us here to be the voice for them, whether regulations say we can or not. But in order for us to move forward, we still have one more application if this one does go through. And we have to find out what we're dealing with on the avenue that we have not dealt with before. So, going extreme, I don't mind that. They can always come back and say, hey, listen, we did good. There was no problems. There were no issues. All the issues that, some people thought could have been were not, not coming to the forefront, and none of that is true. So, at some point, we do have to, and I understand about the location. A lot of people don't agree with the location. Stratford's not but so big. But we have to, as a commission, know what we're dealing with. Like you said, there are regulations, there are state regulations. They have to abide by. Eventually, we're going to have to deal with it, regardless if it's this location or another residential location, because there's a lot of small little areas with stores that are not run and just sitting there, and somebody can go in there in a residential location. This is more of a commercial location. There's a smoke shop right down the street. And believe me, I live right around the corner from there, so I know exactly what some of these constituents are worried about. But how are we going to deal with it when we have another application potentially coming to us and not knowing how we're going to have to deal with it if we don't put something in place to see how this is going to work for our town?
Thank you. Deborah? Jim?
I have nothing further to add, other than what's already been said. I'm ready to vote.
So will someone make a motion?
I think that as you prepare this motion, I think you should at least choose between A and B on the hours that you all, for hours. And then lump that in with 1 through 7 from my staff comments, and if it passes, if it fails, it fails.
And 1 through 6 here.
I'm sorry, 1 through 6. Choose between A and B for the hours.
So then let's first do a vote. We're going to only vote on A or B.
Well, I make a motion that we amend the recommendation so that it says, or Monday through Saturday 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., and Sunday, 2 p.m. to 9 p.m. So in essence, saying B.
And just to piggyback on that one, so we just do 1, and we also vote on it for being 60 days, for the first 60 days of operation. All right. We could just do it into 1. Yeah. It could be just one motion.
Okay. A single motion for?
And we want it to be for the first 60 days of operation, that the business will operate by appointment only for the first 60 days.
And we're going to take the B choice of, you already got that? Okay. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Request a roll call.
A and B.
It was voting on the edit.
So request a roll call so I can say something.
Roll call.
I have to vote against this only because if I vote for it and then vote against Stratford Avenue, to me it makes no sense. So I'm going to have to vote against. Not that I'm opposed to all of this, but for the time being I am. For this particular petition. No, yeah, but no. Go ahead.
Okay. Anybody else?
Everyone's got to vote to say that it's option B in 60 days.
I approve for the amendment of it being option B for number 1, and for it being 60 days of operation for appointment only.
I vote for option B and for 60 days.
I agree. option B and 60 days of operation. The business shall operate by appointment only.
That's the same with me. Option B and 60 days.
I'm not voting for neither because I don't like to restrict the times because I think you'll have more people at a less
Okay.
time.
So Lenny was a no. Or you just, okay.
So I think now that we have the conditions lined up, someone can make a motion for the conditions from the staff comments, 1 through 7, and your amended conditions 1 through 6.
Deborah?
I make a motion to approve with our conditions as amended and include Jay's items in the approval.
Anybody second that?
I second it.
Discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. We're going to do a roll call. Lenny?
No?
Dion? We're voting.
Oh, yeah.
Deborah?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Harold, yes. 4-1. But Jay, we never voted on mine, my two little comments.
Those were included.
Okay.
I had those included in my notes.
Okay.
Why don't you hand me them just in case, just to make sure I have them?
We are now next going to, we're going to go back to,
That's it, unless, did you vote on the minutes?
we voted on the minutes.
So that's it, that's,
No, the only thing we didn't do was Rygate.
we did yep.
Oh, we did. Okay, I'm sorry. So that's it then. Okay, let me just make one final comment again. Speaking to these zoning
Now,
people.
we did read these in, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Get yourself ready because you're gonna have, our administrative meetings that we blow off so much are gonna really become real again. Well, I'm saying, we will have. We will, we will have things to do, so get yourself ready when that starts happening. Because now you can give real, honest-to-God comments that will have meaning. It's going to affect us for the next 10 years on our zoning. So, I think we are.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second. See you next month. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.